All right, David, I'll pass it off to you here for some industry updates. We can run through what's been happening the past 3 months and what's really front and foremost in your mind right now.
Yeah, for sure. Uh, I don't like being the bearer of bad news. In the creative world, they have these six different color hats, right? That you're supposed to be able to wear on demand if you really want to assess a situation with a holistic point of view. And I'm generally speaking the yellow hat guy, which is the optimist in the group, and I see that by default. And unfortunately, what the last number of years have done to me is they are forcing me to put on the black hat, which is where you're orienting your thinking about what can go wrong. And it's out of necessity because our aim is to protect people and the systems that they care about. And a lot of the times it's the systems that they don't know that are running that end up being the weak link. Although it keeps on going back and forth, right? So we're seeing overall that there are trends where there's a greater level of awareness amongst business owners that there are cyber threats, and as a result, some of them are um, getting some additional protection because, which is clear because in ransomware demands, the percentage of ransoms are down significantly. It used to be around 75% of known ransoms or ransom demands were being paid. We're at under 50 now globally. So it's not that these ransomware actors, criminal gangs, are unaware of that trend, but what they're doing is they're demanding more and they're getting more specific about this is your ransom demand. And then when the negotiation response is we can't afford it, then the attacker sends them back their balance sheet and says, it looks like you can, right? And so then it's really hard to negotiate past that. I would recommend a specific podcast episode for anybody who's interested in all of the decisions that go into making such a demand. It's the latest episode of Malicious Life. Malicious.life is the website, and Rand Levy talks in great detail about what the calculations go in. And it's very clear that bean counters are behind this, and then also people who understand all of the different influences. For example, it depends a great deal on exactly when the ransom is presented, what time of day, what day of the week. It matters a great deal on the mood of the person that first receives it, right? So it's just interesting how many factors go into this. But the more we become aware, the more the attacker's point of view of risk reward, the better they can tweak the price to be such that they can extract more. And then there's the double extortion aspect as well. So if you're not going to pay the ransom, then we'll leak the data. And we have that situation with something that's not yet verified, but there is a dark web offering of Boeing data, for example, that's going to be released on November 2nd if the ransom demand isn't paid. And most people know that Boeing is quite an essential supplier to the military industrial complex. So who knows, what all might be contained in that data, if it's even real, but never mind, the threat is there regardless. And we're now also seeing that because there's so much money in cybercrime, that it is now being escalated to a real world threat of violence. So the people that hold keys to the kingdom need to be ones to find a way to let go of those keys because they might be threatened. And in my This Week in Nerd News, I'll be sharing that this morning. That actually is what happened. We have screenshots of text exchanges. There were threats were issued from the attackers that attacked Vegas, the MGM and Caesar's Palace, right? The group that attacked them and then demanded a ransom. And so when you have a virtual threat manifesting itself in a real world of violence and threat of violence, it's kind of getting dangerously uncomfortable for a lot of people that hold a lot of keys, right? And so this is a message for those that actually administer anything like that, to make sure that their own attack surface is minimized by distributing or requiring multi-factor or even multi-party, and in the future, as our fiat money system continues to, go in a direction of, inflation, and our value is getting eroded in terms of dollars and cents, and the world is moving towards crypto, slowly and steady, right? We can just see this over the past decade plus that this has been happening. And then those crypto wallets, when not protected, will become the target of criminals. People think that it's easy to keep a secret, like your 12 or 24 words to a crypto wallet. But you know what? There's the monkey wrench problem. If an attacker knows that you've got those 12 words, I mean, all it takes is a $10 tool from the nearest hardware shop, and then that will become a tool to extract those things. So bottom line is, you want to minimize your own attack surface as a key holder, as an executive of a company, and make it so that you can't even do, wire transfers, for example, distributed amongst, staff that are of separate geographic locations that require MFA tokens, just to make it so that you're exhausting an enemy's resources. Because at the end of the day, there's no such thing as being perfectly secure. The only thing that you can do is be secure enough that when you're attacked, because it's not an if anymore, because at some point you've got more assets than a criminal that's maybe in another jurisdiction. And so if you are seen as having assets that are extractable, the enemy is simply going to make the calculation of what's it going to cost me to extract your asset. And if that cost is a lot less than the return, then it's a very simple economic decision. So what we need to do is make our defenses just strong enough that we exhaust all of the enemy's resources, and they have to give up or move on to another victim. And it doesn't sound too altruistic, but the truth is, I'd rather they move to someone else than me. So that's kind of where we're at today. I'm sorry for the news that things aren't going in the right direction, but there is, the silver lining is that tools and resources to take the proactive measures are available, and we are in that business to provide that peace of mind. We are in the business of saying, let's seriously analyze your attack surface, how you are exposed as a company and as an organization, as individuals, and let's minimize that risk so that the attackers simply move on. That is how we can help. Yeah.
I'm gonna plug Nerd News in the description of this video for you there, and I'll see if I can that Malicious Life link as well. Let me see.
You bet.
Yeah, just clarification: the 12 to 24 words and monkey wrench. I'm assuming that when you mentioned the text deal with Vegas, that there were personal threats of violence on key holders by these criminals.
Yes, correct.
Now, when it comes to cryptocurrency, you go to a hardware store and get a monkey wrench?
No, I'm sorry for that lack of clarity, and thank you for pointing that out. At the end of the day, the only thing that protects a crypto wallet is your passphrase and your words, your 12 to 24 words. So if someone comes up to me right now and says, give me your 12 words to your Bitcoin wallet that you have on your iPhone, I'm like, I don't have it. I could lie about it. And they could say, well, the attacker could now take a monkey wrench, whack me over the head, and then maybe use my retina, use my thumbprint to get access to my phone, right? And so that the weak link is always the analog method. That's always the weak link. Yeah.
Yeah, you can always have your hand forced. And
Yeah.
if you're anonymous, you're a target. So
Right. And, as much as we think that our financial systems are subpar because of how much they facilitate, I was in a post-incident response review meeting last week where the executive of a family office had had money stolen out of his account. And the way it happened was that the attacker knew of this guy's the actual executive's vacation plan, so he was going to be off the grid, and planned the attack strategically by using his email address, but with a slight different spelling of the domain, and then contacted the account rep at the bank. And then the request was, hey, can you please add my new bookkeeper to my account? So the actual account holder is actually off the grid, but the attacker is emailing the bank to say, can you please add this? And so then they're like, well, why don't you just come in, since we're just across the street from you? Actually, I'm on vacation, which turned out to be truth, but written by the attacker. Can you just enable it online, and I'll pick up the rest of the documents later? The bank agreed. Turns out to be Wells Fargo. The bank agreed and provided the access. And then after that, others were added. And then by the time he was back, $160,000 had been transferred out of the account. Now, where we are today in terms of banking systems and security, and when banks decide to defend the client or give the client the money back, has been a very clear line drawn. When I got involved in one of the first ones many years ago, it was here in London, and it was a Tim Hortons franchise owner that had a similar thing happen to them. The bank immediately said, no worries, you're not liable for any of that theft. The bank will take care of all of that. It wasn't until a couple of years later that the bank decided, well, each one of these cases needs to be investigated. And where they draw the line is if the client did anything to facilitate the fraud, now the client was liable. If it was only if it was 100% the bank's insecurity, did the bank then take the liability of that theft? And in this case, the investigation is still going on because it's not very clear what mechanisms the attacker used to extract some of that information. So if the client had any kind of weakness in their own system that allowed the fact that he was on vacation to become knowable by the attacker, that would influence the bank's decision about whether they're going to, cover it or not. So it's not a foregone conclusion anymore. Those of us, like in the past, I rested assured that, hey, my credit card, I don't care if the world knows about it, because I've always got 30 days to make a claim against Visa to say that wasn't me, and Visa will give me the money back. But that does not apply to wire transfers. Right? So you have to be very careful about where the law is in your favor, or the financial institution has got your back, and when they don't. In crypto wallet, you have zero chance of recovering a stolen wallet. Absolutely zero.
I think it's technically 0.0, not to correct you, but
well, actually, in mathematical terms, John, 0.0 means not zero. So you're right. I suppose if you knew who the thief was, you could always use the monkey wrench against them, right? So yeah, 0.0 is more accurate.
There we go.
Well, and you could return the monkey wrench if they left it behind, or at least get a store credit. So you'd recover some of it. So how does that work if somebody's just posting all over Facebook in their Hawaiian shirt? Hey, we're off to Hawaii next week. Can't wait.
Yeah.
I haven't been back
Please
since
don't.
20. You mean, no.
Please don't.
Yeah, I'm not even on Facebook.
Yeah.
I mean, but
But
you know
you're
what I'm
right,
saying?
John.
Like, are they liable in that case? Would the bank point to that and say,
Well,
it's
up to the bank.
Right? Yeah.
If the bank says no, we are not responsible because of this and this, at the end of the day, you're left up to the terms of service of the bank services, and then it's going to end up being a fight between lawyers. But if generally speaking, if the bank says no, they've already assessed it by their own internal counsel that says no, we're protected, don't pay out. In the past, that was a PR thing. It's no longer a PR thing for banks if they can point to one thing that was their client's weakness.
Oh,
But
man.
that's a very, very valid point, John. The world has got to the point where they're exposing their entire life to strangers and doing it almost in an addictive manner. They can't help themselves.
Right.
And it's,
I mean, I'll
Right.
mention Steve Gibson's name on this podcast because he's been doing the Security Now podcast for 18 years. And I remember 10 years ago already, him saying, if you really want to post something online, but you having been somewhere, do it after you're back.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Because then it can't be used against you in that way.
Exactly.
But it's if I'm not mistaken, is Facebook Meta not up on charges for addictive procedures? Like a number of states have brought suit for addictive procedures regarding children, youth, and social media.
Would not surprise me.
Should
Yeah.
be Google. Should be YouTube.
Well,
The YouTube algorithm. Google should be.
that's true. That's true.
Yeah. But yeah, if that's the case, that is hopeful because what it's doing on so many fronts.
Charlie,
monetizing
you're not
stupidity, pulling people out
Charlie,
of
you're not
workforce.
wrong. I'm just reading a CNBC headline that says Meta sued by 42 attorney generals alleging Facebook, Instagram features are addictive and targeting kids.
Instagram. Wow.
There you go.
42.
And that's just from this
That's-
past week. Yeah. Wow.
That's more than I thought it was like 20 or something.
33 state
know-
AGs. Wow. I hope they get somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're not one party or another. They're
Right.
both sides, and
Right.
they're bringing suit. So yeah, this is a real
We're seeing like the bigger picture. Those of us that are parents is that we're now seeing study after study that shows the happiest kids are the ones that had to wait the longest time to get a cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard because they see all their friends and our kids. It was a real struggle because they were always the last ones in their group to get a phone. And I've now resorted to bribery, right up bribery. Our fourth son that's not yet in high school, I've told him he gets $1,000 invested into something of his choice at the beginning of each year that he decides to delay getting a phone for another year. So I'm shamelessly bribing him now not to get a phone.
but that's something. At least there's a stance behind that offering. Most parents take no stance.
Mm.
They
That's an
just
investment,
pay.
not a bribe. Yep. Investing on a couple of fronts.
That's a good point. That's a good
We just
point,
don't let our youngest have friends that way. There's no pressure.
Oh,
To
man.
be determined how this one turns out. But
Approach, John, I like it.